Hi there. If you, in July of 2009, had Googled United Airlines, the third highest search result would have been United Brakes guitars. And why is that remarkable? Well, it's remarkable because I'm a regular guy just like you. Could I get a show of hands in the audience of who here has had a bad airline experience or knows somebody who has? Well, that means that we have something in common, and that relatability has fueled one of the most successful customer service complaints in history, I'm told. If you have a video and you post it to YouTube and it does something outstanding in a given month, they award it what they call honors. And in July of 2009, United Brakes guitars had a lot of honors. It was the #1 most watched music video in the world for the whole month of July. Thank you. But more than that, I thought this was more interesting, is it was the #6 most watched video of any kind in the world for the whole month of July. So it had become more than just a music story, it had become a social statement. And since then, 400 books have been written that talk about United Brakes guitars in one way or another. The highest levels of education, Harvard does an annual case study on this. And cooler than that, there's a grade 1 class in Pennsylvania who followed me for a year to talk about the power of one person to make a change with not a lot of money but some passion. And the coolest thing that's ever happened to me in my life, I was a $1,000 question on the game show Jeopardy! So I'm going to talk about the video quite a bit for this presentation, so maybe we can watch some of it. This is called United Brakes guitars.
I flew United Airlines on my way to Nebraska. The plane departed Halifax, connecting in Chicago's O'Hare. While on the ground, a passenger said from the seat behind me, "My God, they're throwing guitars out there." The band and I exchanged a look, best described as terror, at the action on the tarmac, and knowing whose projectiles these would be. So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me. United, United, you broke my Taylor guitar. United, United, some big help you are. You broke it, you should fix it. You're liable, just admit it. I should have flown with someone else or gone by car. 'Cause United Brakes guitars.
So that's United Brakes guitars. Thank you. And so, how did all this begin? Well, back on March 31st, 2008, I was flying with my brother Don and our band Sons of Maxwell. We were going from Halifax, ultimately to Nebraska. And we stopped in Chicago to deplane and catch our connector. And I'm sitting near the back of the plane, and across from me was my bass player and friend Mike Hiltz. And behind him was a woman who didn't know we were musicians. But she looked out the window and felt compelled to say, "Oh my God, they're throwing guitars outside." Right? That's what I did. And I tried to get the flight attendant to take some interest, and she wouldn't. And I was directed outside the plane, and the lead agent wouldn't take any interest. She disappeared into the airport. And just inside O'Hare, there was a woman about to make a phone call at the wicket. And I walked up to her, and I interrupted her, and I said, "Excuse me, they're throwing our guitars outside, and we'd like someone to do something about this." And she paused long enough to say, "But hun, that's why you signed the waiver." And she started. And that's right. So it wasn't bad enough that our guitars were being thrown around an international airport. I'd just been rejected by 3 women in 5 minutes. Well, it turned out that my $3,500 Taylor guitar, which I bought when I didn't have $3,500, was really badly damaged. And I tried to get United to take some responsibility for that for nearly 9 months. And I called all the 1-800 numbers direct to India. I was online, I went back to the phones, I talked to people all over the place, and in every case, people either didn't want to help or they weren't empowered to help. And I was stuck in this tumultuous customer service maze that we've all been in many times. And so eventually, after all this time, I ended up meeting a woman customer service rep from Chicago, and we had a series of email exchanges. And at the end of the day, she said, "Mr. Carroll, we're not responsible for the damage to your guitar because you didn't open up a claim within 24 hours. And so I was frustrated, and I just started typing right back to her, and I said, if I were a lawyer, I might sue United Airlines, but I'm not. I'm a musician, and I have other tools at my disposal. And so without thinking, I said, I'm going to make 3 songs and make 3 videos about my experience with United Airlines. And I'm going to post them to YouTube, and I'm going to try and get 1 million hits in 1 year with all 3 videos combined. I said, you don't need to respond to me as you promised that you won't. I will keep you tabbed on the progress. And when that first video is done, I'll let you know so that we can watch it, and together we can get to 1 million that much quicker. And that's exactly what I did. In June, 7 months later, in June of 2009, I went to the Waverley Fire Hall, where I'd been a volunteer firefighter for 5 years. And thanks to my friends in the music business and who helped make the recording, and my friends in the film business who helped make the video, and all the people who came together, for $150, I was able to make this first video that has since been seen now 13.2 million views. And 150 million people in the world are now familiar with this story. And so we shot the video. It was great. I had it in my hands on July 1st. I posted it on July 6th. My entire social media strategy was just to put it up on YouTube. And on Monday, July 6th at 11:30 p.m., I posted it online. And I went to bed 30 minutes later, and I had 6 hits. And I thought all 6 were mine, right? Because I was going to watch this 1 million times if I needed to. But fortunately, I didn't have to, because the next morning I had 300 hits. And I had 5,000 hits by lunchtime, and 25,000 hits by dinner time. And the next morning, it officially started a media frenzy. By Friday of that week, it hit 1 million. And in those early days, it was crazy. You couldn't keep up with the media. I was doing interviews from 7 a.m. till like 11 p.m., and then I would go to bed for 2 hours, and I would wake up at 2 in the morning, and I would do the European media circuit. And so it was really exhausting, and it was exhilarating all at the same time. And it was about building a brand and doing incredible things. And fortunately, I had a nice group of people to support me. And I discovered very early in those early media days that depending on who you were, depending on the media source that covered it, you might be more or less interested in my story. So for instance, when I was in Rolling Stone, my musician friends were like, dude, it's Rolling Stone, right? For me, being on the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, that was kind of the cool thing, because there was Wolf Blitzer declaring to the international community that this wasn't just a story, it's a situation, right? There were my friends on the Situation wall screens, and they were rocking out, and Wolf Blitzer was rocking out. I caught him doing this. And they put our story between one and the Pope and Barack Obama. So I did all these interviews, hundreds of interviews over the next few months. 6 months later, I got a call from ABC Television, and they asked me if I wanted to go on The View with Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies. And so before I even said yes to them, I called my mom, because that's her favorite show, right? So I called my mom on the phone. I said, Ma, I got big news. I'm going to be on The View next week. And she's never at a loss for words, but there was dead silence. And then, holy fuck. Right? This turned my mother into a potty mouth, right? And my dad's saying, that's great. Well, about a week later, I get a call from Reader's Digest, and I do a Reader's Digest interview. And I phone home, and I'm talking to my mom about some other things, and I said, mention to Dad I did a Reader's Digest interview. And she's like, neat, I'll tell him for sure. My dad, he calls back, and he doesn't like the telephone, but he calls me back as excited as I've ever heard him. And he's like, son, Reader's Digest, this is huge. This is going to help your CD sales. I'm proud of you. Right? So the story went far and wide, and it changed my life instantly. But it didn't just change my career. It started to have ripples across the world in social media, in customer service, and in branding. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you today about, is branding, and specifically personal branding. Because we all have a brand. And we tend to maybe think traditionally in terms of branding as big companies like Coca-Cola with a great logo and a cool catchphrase. But personal branding is becoming more important today, because like your personal brand and like a company's brand, it's really nothing more than the sum of the conversations being had about it. Your brand is nothing more than the sum of the conversations being had about it. And so if you want to enhance your personal brand today and you combine social media with that, you can do some incredible things if you take it seriously. And in my case, like I said, I had a lot of fun and a lot of experience and a lot of people helping me out. And I think with all the academic study, though, about branding, I think I learned everything I need to know about branding from my family. United Breaks Guitar Song 2, the trilogy is up there. The second song, United Breaks Guitar Song 2, is my favorite for a few reasons. It had 100 people involved. It was right on the heels, being shot in August of 2009 of the first video. And my wife was in there, my grandmother, 88 years old. My dad, my son was in there, and it was a really great day. And there's this scene, it's a blooper at the end that I really like, that the camera from a high angle was looking down, and on this field, everyone was in this scene, in the frame. And they said from the megaphone up top, everybody has to get out of the frame. We have one shot to get this right, and we want everyone out to leave Dave on the field by himself, to put his guitar down and walk off the field. And everyone got that message just about. Everyone got out of the frame. I put my guitar down. I went up to stand to walk away, and I saw two people still there. And it was my grandmother and the woman holding her up, because my grandmother didn't listen, and she missed the memo that she was supposed to leave the field. So on this video, you see me walking up to her, and I'm trying to whisk her off the field as fast as I possibly can. And she's British, and the British are never wrong, and they can articulate that. And so she was saying, "Where are we going? No one told me anything." Right? So we get her off the field. 2 weeks later, we launched the video, and it gets popular really quick again. Not like the first one, but it was still, there was a spike in interest. And I'm driving in my car one day, and I get a call, and you never knew who was going to call. And this time, it was from a casting director in Halifax. And she said, Olympia Dukakis, the Oscar-winning actress, is coming to town, and she's shooting a feature film here in Halifax, and we're looking for actors. So I'm overcome. I had to pull the car over to collect myself. I'm thinking, I'm going to be in an Olympia Dukakis movie. And she says, "We want to know if your grandmother's available." I said, "We like her work in video too." So I went home and I convinced my grandmother, and she did it. In the afternoon of one day in August, she went, and she was the irrepressible sleeping lady in bed too in an Olympia Dukakis movie. She made $160 in 4 hours, and she came home. She donated it to charity. And then she said, "I'm retiring from acting, David. I like to keep a low profile." But not long after that, though, my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And they gave her 9 months to live, and she exceeded that. She lived a full year. And I learned a lot from my grandmother growing up, but what I think I learned most was how to die with dignity, because she died with tremendous dignity. She didn't want to take any medication. She accepted the fate and the diagnosis. She never complained. And, you know, she didn't want to die in the hospital. And fortunately, she didn't have to, because she got to die one morning in her bed at my parents' house. And it wasn't just any bed. It was her wrought iron bed that reminded her of being a little girl back in England. And the reason I think that's relevant today is because you might think, as a musician, the coolest thing, the highest takeaway for me would be having the #1 music video in the world for a whole month. But it's not. It's not even close. For me, it's having this memory of my grandmother, acting silly and full of life in a video that I can introduce to her great-grandsons, my 2 young sons. And it reminded me that through this whole experience, that my brand, your brand, our platforms, they all rest upon the stories of other people. Our brands today are co-created. And that means that, you know, I'm not here because I did something amazing. Something amazing happened that I may have given some momentum to, but it was really created by a whole bunch of people. And so what does it mean when I say your platform rests upon the stories of other people? For me, it means that I feel that I now have a sense of responsibility to help other people understand that their voice matters and that they have a story worth telling. So if you feel that you're isolated or silenced or alone, I want you to know that you're none of those three. I want you to know that if you show up with some passion and some creativity and the right intention, that the right people will always show up at exactly the right time to help you achieve your goals. And I want you to know that there's liberation in knowing that when you're on purpose, that your greatest successes will never, ever feel like work, because you're never going to have to shoulder more than a portion of the load yourself. And so now I spend my time, in the last few years, I've kind of repurposed my life, and I try and improve the world one experience at a time. And I've decided that I can do that with my guitar as a musician, or with my book, or when I speak around the world, or with any of the 3 internet startups that I'm now involved with the services we offer. And because I believe our brands are co-created, and we have a responsibility to other people, that's why I do that sort of thing. And through this experience, and understanding all of that, I now am able to view my experience from a position of deep gratitude, because I get re-energized. Every time I tell the story, I get to re-experience the gratitude for all the people who helped me make it, and who, maybe in this room, who watched the video, who have given me this platform that I'm so happy to have. And it always leads me back to what I think is the number one reason why United Breaks Guitars was so successful and why it should matter to you. And I think the reason is simply this, that we're connected. I believe you and I and everyone in the world are fundamentally connected with one another. And it's not just something that we say as an affirmation to pump ourselves up. I believe that we're fundamentally connected. And it changes everything about the way I see the world and the world around me. They say social media connects us. I don't think it does. I think social media is a tool that allows us to experience the connection that already exists. And so I hope that when people hear my story going forward, that they will move away from that knee-jerk reaction to say, this is the classic David and Goliath tale of battle, and move towards what I think is the higher lesson, which is that if you're willing to peel back the layers and share yourself with other people, if you're willing to allow yourself to become vulnerable enough, that you're going to make deep connections with other people, and in that connected space, that's where all the magic happens. That's where it all happens. And so I'll ask you this question. What are your strengths? What passions do you possess? And how can you use your creativity to tell your story and build your brand in a way that'll help other people in the world? We're connected. You are powerful. Know that. And then ask yourself, what will I do to make a difference? Thank you.